Here we have Hobby Dave's awesome Kenwood TS990. And today we're going to start installing the Asymod C1 as the Asymod Console. And we're just about to get started. Hello and welcome to another Asymod video. Introducing the Asymod C1. Paired up with the Kenwood TS990. We'll be doing some tests. We use the MC90 stock desk mic. And then we'll also do some tests running the Kenwood hand mic, traditional Kenwood hand mic. The Asymod C1 connects to the Kenwood TS990 via the HDMI connector. Here we are on the underside of the radio, and we're going to remove the DSP unit at the moment. We have now removed the digital unit, and we'll move on to remove the DC to DC unit right here to access our DSP unit under that cover. Now that we've removed the DC unit and the digital unit, we can access the cover to remove our DSP. We've now removed the cover of the DSP unit and some hardware. We're ready to take it out. Well, after removing a few boards, some hardware, and quite a bit of screws, we finally arrived to the DSP board, and we've detached it completely, marked all the plugs. Much of the connectivity to the Asymod C will be at this DSP board. So now we're going to pull it out and do some work on it. And here we've finally taken the DSP board out. And here it is. Now we can get to work. And here we have the Asymod enable and disable switch hole already open. There's our switch. We have now installed all of our connections to the DSP unit. And we'll put her back in her cavity. Well, we're about 50% of the internal connections for the Asymod C on this awesome Kenwood TS990. We have made the hole to install the HDMI connector and through the hole for the Asymod enable disable switch. Now we've put back our digital board, and we're going to put back now the DC to DC unit, and we'll be moving up to the next steps. At this point, we removed the antenna tuner switch and the antenna switch to access the antenna tuner board. And here we're going to tap for the RF sample for the oscilloscope and for the demodulator. At this point, we've taken out the antenna switch the antenna tuner switchboard, all the RF connectors, and we're gonna get to the antenna tuner here. We're at the input. We're gonna tap in for the RF sample for the oscilloscope and also for the coupler for the AM demodulator. Here we have the antenna tuner switchboard, and here's where we're gonna do our tapping for the RF sample and the coupler for the demodulator. Well, now we've got the antenna tuner switchboard back on, and our pickup toroid core is right there for the coupler, right there at the very input of the antenna tuner switchboard. That's your SWR forward and reverse voltage detector. And there we have it, the antenna tuner section, antenna tuner switchboard, and antenna switch for the antenna tuner is back on there. Okay, this is one of the taps we had to do here. Over there, that's fine. This is another tap that we had to do. Right here. This guy. We got the part out and you're looking at the part. Only that you can't see it because it's very, very tiny. Drove me crazy. It's a capacitor, it's shorted out. Well, here we are, and we had a small setback. Once we turned the radio on and started listening, we heard that the main, not the sub, the main receive section was sounding distorted. And we finally found what it was after a day and a half of troubleshooting. This is the DSP board. On top of it, we have these two boards, which is the digital board and the DC-DC board. This board is a double-sided board, so most of the components are on the bottom, made it really hard to troubleshoot. But we found the problem. The problem was a shorted capacitor on the bias of the last op amp before the main audio amplifier. We got the new part right here. If we could find it. There it is. That's the new one. We now are done installing all of the connections needed, and we'll start configuring the Asymod C. Well, we think now it's ready. Everything seems to work okay. Here in the rear, we've installed the HDMI connector and the Asymod enable and disable switch. Towards the switch, the Asymod is enabled. Away from the switch, the Asymod is disabled. Again, towards the switch, enabled. Away from the switch, disabled. We have now installed the mains connector, and we have installed the HDMI connector. At this point, we're going to have the Asymod disable switch on the disabled position, facing away from the connector. We'll now go ahead and connect the HDMI connector to the Asymod C1, and this is your HDMI connector right here. It goes to the transceiver. Then you have your RF sampler, output for your oscilloscope, line out to record, transmit, or receive audio to an external recorder. You have your auxiliary N to cue your program. You have your amp keyer to key your big amps. You have your ID record input, that is to record your ID recorder. That is to record your ID onto the ID recorder by pressing the record button on the front panel. And you have your PTT connector and your line N connector. Next thing we'll do, we'll connect the RF sample output using this BNC connector that goes directly to our oscilloscope input, right in this case to channel 3, which is the blue. Now that we have connected both the BNC connector for the RF sample and our HDMI connector, we're going to go ahead and power on the mains switch on the power supply on the rear panel of the Kenwood TS990. Here we have installed our voltage regulator, our pass transistor, and our modulation amplifier. In this build, we're modulating directly the RD100 driver right here. That's our RF power MOSFET driving our finals. The next thing we've done, we've installed the audio line-in connector coming from our MBox 2 Mini. And we've installed our antenna to antenna number 1. There, that's antenna number 1. Next, we're going to run Pro Tools. We'll go ahead and open up a session. All right. The first thing we're going to do is run the radio as it is from factory. We're going to totally disable the Asymod. So the first thing we do is go to the Asymod and turn it off. Right here in the carrier control, fully counterclockwise, till you hear that click in the off position. And the Asymod disable switch in the rear is also disabled. To run the first basic tests, we're going to use the Kenwood hand mic. I'm going to plug that in. And we'll test the transceiver in all modes and note the power output, and we'll note the modulation percentage as a stock radio there on the O-scope. So we'll do the preliminary test. Okay, so we're running some tests as a stock radio. The Asymod is totally disabled. We have set the mode to lower sideband on the main VFO, and our settings are our microphone will be in the center position, 12 o'clock. Our processor we're not using, so it doesn't matter. Power and carrier in the center, and this is not needed right now. That is our keyer, and that's also for our keyer. So we're not using any of those two or this one. Okay, so lower sideband, we're going to be using the stock Kenwood microphone just to test out power, and then compare it to later with the Asymod installed. Okay, here we have installed the HDMI cable and the power cable. Now, one thing to remember is the on and off switch of the power supply here in the back. Keep that off anytime when you're plugging or unplugging the HDMI connector. Very important. We have now installed the HDMI and the BNC for the RF sample output. The session we have selected in Pro Tools, we use it to tune all the radios, and it will be available for download at the Asymod site, and it's called W1. As we do the test, we'll be monitoring the power output here on the Bird. We will be using a 50-watt slug, and our modulation envelope, we'll look at it right here. We will also be looking at our spectrum analyzer to make sure everything is how it's supposed to be. We'll leave it right now on disable. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and test the Kenwood TS990 as it is from factory. First we'll try it out on sideband. We have our power settings here on the max. We want to see the max that it does. So we'll go ahead and modulate. This is the Kenwood TS990, and we're trying it out on sideband, and we're showing about close to 200 watts, about 180 watts. Audio, about 180, 170 watts on the Bird. So let's go ahead and try it out on AM. Switch to AM. As you can see, we're on AM. We'll go ahead and transmit. Well, before we do that, let's bring our carrier and power halfway. And right now we have that's 30 watt dead key, to be exact. We're on the top scale. Our mic here is at the center position. Our forward power, our PDP power from 25 watts. Audio 1, 2, testing AM on the Kenwood TS990. On average is about 70% modulation. Audio 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you have it. 25 watt carrier, close to 100 watts. 4 times your carrier is your 100% mark. So as you can see, we barely reach the 100 watts there when we talk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stays around 60 watts. Very good. So now we'll move on to testing out the Asymod C1. Okay, before we go into the testing, let's go over the functions of the Asymod C1. Pretty much the Asymod C1 has all the functions necessary to run a hi-fi station. you can monitor yourself through the demodulator, or you can hear yourself through the line in here by switching from demod to line in through your headphones. Okay? At the same time, when you receive, you can hear your received signal through the same headphones. Now, you have a fader. With the fader, you can fade to transmit audio or receive audio. So if you turn it towards the TX completely, you only hear the transmitted audio. At that point, you can choose between demod or line in. Or you can put it in the middle and you hear both, transmit and receive. And you can still switch from line in or demod. Now the ID, you record your ID, your station ID, by pressing here, your ID record button. And that when you activate the station ID, that switch in the up position, every time you key the mic, your station ID will be played on the air. Okay? When you're monitoring yourself, this tone control controls the tone of the demod. So you can tune into however you like to hear it best. Going down, we have the Asymod controls, just like standard all Asymod controls operate. You got your gain control, your modulation, your carrier, and your asymmetry control. To set the Asymod, you first choose what kind of dead key you want, how much power do you want for a dead key. Say you choose 2 watts. First of all, you have to turn it on, and then you choose 2 watts on the meter. Then you know that 4 times your carrier is your 100% modulation. So you bring up your modulation until you see 8 watts on the meter, because we had a 2 watt dead key times 4 is 8 watts PEP. So once you reach 8 watts, by raising your modulation as you're talking to the mic, you leave it there. That's 100% modulation. Then you can add a little bit of asymmetry if you want. Add gain on your positive peaks and sound louder on your asymmetry right here. You have your recorder playback function. You can record on-air stations by pressing the record button here and playing it back over the air by pressing play. The speaker disable switch, when in the down position, it disables the radio speaker, as it is right now. We put it on, you can hear the speaker. Put it down, disables the speaker. And that is done so when you're monitoring yourself, the speaker doesn't feed back with the microphone, so you only hear the headphones. Then you have your VFO whine, which is not, in this build, is not installed. And your MUX control, you can transmit through here. By flipping that switch, you can transmit. To run this radio as it comes from factory, the Asymod disable switch in the rear must be in the disable position, and the carrier control here has to be in the off position. Once we turn it on, you can see the AM mode comes on, and then just flip the switch in the rear and enable the Asymod, and we're good to go. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and give it a test run on AM. We're here on 28300, and we're gonna go ahead and key up. We are running right now a 15 watt dead key. So let's go ahead and key up. There you see your 2 divisions. Your reference is set. On the bird, we see that we have 15 watts. Each little division is 5 watts. So 15 watts when we key up. And now when we modulate, we have 100% modulation on the scope. You see our signal right there. There's no harmonics. And we see on the bird, we now have .40 watts PEP. On the bird, we have 40 watts PEP. 40 watts. So we have a 10 watt dead key, and when we modulate, we see our 40 watts. 3. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a test run on AM. Let's key up. We've set our dead key for 10 watts. And when we modulate, we see 40 watts, which is 100% modulation, as you see here on the scope. Now, if you want to add a little asymmetry, you could add, there you are, 200% modulation. To avoid that jumping, we assign to channel 3. We simply adjust our trigger. There we go. So we see we have 200% modulation. Bring that back down to 100. Right there. We kill the audio. There you have it. Today we're going to be testing out the TS990 with the Asymod C1, the Asymod Console, and we're going to do various tests. First, we're going to test with the Kenwood hand mic. Then we're going to test it with the MC90 Kenwood desk mic, and then we're going to test it with the processed audio, the RE20 mic running Pro Tools. So first we're going to do a test here on the 10 meter band, AM mode. We'll test out sideband later, and we're also going to go through all the bands and test it out in all the bands. Mainly 80, 40, 20, and 10 meters. Okay, so let's begin. We'll start by using the hand mic. Now, right now we have disabled the Asymod completely. To completely disable the Asymod, the carrier needs to be turned off until you hear the click, and the switch in the back needs to be disabled. So now the radio is running as it is from factory. We'll put our power around halfway there, and let's key up. Okay, let's turn on the other camera. Let's go ahead and set the reference. For that, we select our channel that we're coming in right here. channel 3 is going to the Asymod RF sample out. To set a reference, we bring it down. We increase the voltage per division until we cover 2 divisions. We need to bring it up a little bit. There it is, centered. And a little more. That's it. So that's our reference right there. Now, we're running this radio as it is from factory. We're going to see the maximum modulation that it can do, and then we're going to compare that to the Asymod later. We'll see how that works with the asymmetrical gain on your positive peaks. All right, so let's go ahead and talk into the mic. There's the hand mic. Audio 1, 2. Audio 1, 2. This is the Kenwood hand mic, and at the moment we're doing about 30 watts of carrier, 35 watts of carrier, and we're swinging to about 70 watts, give or take. 70 watts, give or take. Okay, so that's our modulation envelope. As we can see, it's 100% modulation right there. You see that peak? So the radio is doing from factory 100% modulation. On average, it's about 70%, 60 to 80% mostly. Like right there, you saw a peak going to 100. Do you want to? Let's go ahead and test it out now with the Asymod and see how it performs as far as the modulation percentage. Okay, so now what we do is we enable the switch in the back and we turn on the Asymod. And we key up, and let's put a carrier lower than what we had. We had a 30 watt carrier. Let's put 10 watts of carrier. All right, so let's key up. First thing, remember all the controls counterclockwise for the Asymod. And key up. Bring up your carrier until we see the 10 watts on the meter. That is each line on the bird is 5 watts, so 10 watts is right there. Okay. Let's set a reference over here. Now we have to decrease the voltage per division, and that's about right there. Lower it a little bit there. Okay, so now we're running the Asymod and we're running the hand mic. So let's see, as far as the modulation envelope, if we could go past 100%. Audio 1, audio. Okay, first thing is we got our carrier. Second thing is your modulation. Bring it up. Audio 1, 2. Audio, audio, audio. Audio 1, 2. Testing out, 1, 2. Now again, we don't have any limiter in line right now, so when operating like this, you need to make sure that you monitor your modulation closely. When we run Pro Tools, we have control of that. We have control of the peaks and the audio, and we set a level that we don't exceed. That way, we never distort while we're on the air. Okay, so as you can see already, we're having more than 100% modulation, and that's with the asymmetry almost all the way down. If we increase the asymmetry, audio 1, 2, you can see it there jump to over 300%, but that's just for demonstration purposes. We see that obviously with the Asymod now, we have a lot more modulation. The modulation is a lot higher, and with no distortion. You don't see any pinching at the 0 volt line. So let's go ahead and set up for the recording. and we'll test out all 3 microphones and the audio, how it sounds. Okay, first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna start recording on Vegas, and we're gonna set the audio levels. For that, let's minimize this, close this out. Okay, so let's generate a tone. First, let's go ahead and transmit. In transmit, we have a 10 watt dead key. Now we're gonna connect the line in connector. Now we're gonna run the tone from Pro Tools to do some tuning. So we'll key up, we'll start the generator. Okay. Yeah, all we're doing right now is setting the levels for the recording. So we're gonna record the audio from both the IC706 and from the Drake R8. We'll go back and forth and see the difference. All right, so we'll start recording out of the 706, and let me transmit. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and give it a test. We put the radio back to factory because now we're gonna be recording audio live, and so the Asymod is completely disabled at this moment. That we just turned it off, and we've already disabled it in the back. So let's go ahead and key up, set up certain settings so we could work on that. And at the moment, we have, let's lower the dead key. Let's put a 10 watt dead key. That's 10 watts right there. Okay, let's adjust here there we go. Okay, so we're talking out of the Kenwood hand mic, and this is what it sounds like. So you can see we're doing about 100% right there. You saw audio 1, audio. You see the 100%. Over here on this scope, we're monitoring the RF sampler out of the Asymod C1, and on that scope we're monitoring the output actually on the RF line. So that's what we have. That's what it sounds like. Now let's test out the MC90. Okay, so here we are using the MC90. Obviously we need to bring the modulation up a little bit. It's got 3 settings on the bottom. 1, 2, there's 1 test, 2 test, 3 test. Audio. I believe this is the best one. Okay, so we need to bring up our mic gain a little bit. Audio 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the MC90 desk mic. Okay, so this is what it sounds like using the hand mic, the Kenwood hand mic. And as you can see, audio 1, 2, audio 1, 2. We're doing almost 100% modulation there at times. And this is what it sounds like as we record here in Vegas. Let me give it a little more audio. Actually, we're receiving out of the Drake R8 receiver at the moment. And let's see, audio 1, 2, test 1, 2, 3. Record level, let's lift it up a little more. Audio 1, 2, 3, 4, audio. Okay, so this is what it sounds like using the hand mic. Here with the Kenwood TS990, and the Asymod C1 is off at the moment. We're running this radio as it is from factory. The Asymod switch in the back has been disabled, and the Asymod has been turned off. So we've set our carrier for a 10 watt, and we see on our scope there we're doing times, we see the peaks of 100%, like right there, audio. But on average, we see about 75% modulation. Okay, so let's go ahead and test out now the MC90
Kenwood desk microphone. Okay, this is what it sounds like with the MC90 Kenwood desk microphone. Here talking out of the Kenwood TS990. And as we record on Sony Vegas, it sounds a lot more deeper. I see a lot more low end in it. And again, we're recording this coming out of the Drake R8 receiver. Let's switch over to the ICOM 706 to see the difference. Okay, this is what it sounds like with the ICOM 706 as we record from the 706 actually, using the MC90 mic. As compared to the Drake R8 receiver, this has a lot less low end, as you can see, more in the mids and highs. Anyways, let's go ahead and put the Kenwood hand mic back on so we can test it out with the ICOM 706. Okay, this is the Kenwood hand mic, and as you can see, it sounds very 3KC-ish. No low end, strong on the mids, good for 2-meter and VHF, UHF portable communication to get that message across. However, audio 1, as we see on the scope, we're still doing an average of 75% modulation, rare peaks of 100 like we saw right there. And now we're going to switch back to turning the Asymod back on, enabling it in the back, and we'll do some tests running the processed audio. But first, we're going to test out the hand mic and the MC90 running the Asymod C1. Then, lastly, we'll go into the Pro Tools and the RE20 mic. All right, let's move on.
Okay, so let's enable the Asymod here on the back. Let's go ahead and turn on the Asymod up here. And now, let's go ahead and test out the MC90 running just the Asymod with no audio processing. First, we're gonna bring all our controls counterclockwise. There. And for the meantime, let's go ahead and plug Pro Tools in to first set up our levels. So let's start the SIGGEN. Let's go ahead and transmit and set our carrier for 10 watts. So send, bring up our carrier till we see 10 watts on the bird. Each line is 5 watts, so one interesting thing to mention, let's stop transmitting. When you're using the Asymod, you need to bring both power and carrier controls all the way to the max. Clockwise, both. We're controlling the carrier through the carrier control here now. So let's go ahead and transmit again, bring everything down. You don't want to start transmitting and have a super high carrier. So send, and we'll bring up the carrier. Let's kill Pro Tools. I hear the mic in the background. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring up our carrier to 10 watts. That's 10 watts. A reference is set on the scope. Let's start the SIGGEN, the 800 hertz tone. And as you can see, we have our waveform, we have our envelope, and we're going to lift up the modulation control so we get to 100% modulation there. And we'll give it a little bit of asymmetry. There, that's about 150%. We'll leave it there. That's about 140%. We'll leave it there for now. Okay, stop the SIGGEN. Stop transmitting. And now let's go ahead and unplug the line-in connector so that we enable the front microphone connector. We can talk from the front mic. All right, so let's go ahead and transmit and see what it sounds like. Let's make sure we're recording here on Vegas. Still. Yep, sure we are. Okay. So here we are transmitting with the MC90, and this time we're running the Asymod. Let's bring up the modulation a little bit. Actually, a little under modulating there. Let me lower that. We don't need that. Let me bring up the modulation. Audio 1, 2. Audio 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, audio. Audio 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Test. Okay, so here we have the MC90, as you can see already. We have peaks there of about 200% modulation. And it sounds similar, but a little more low end and a bit louder. Okay, so let's go ahead and change over to the processed audio running Pro Tools and see what that sounds like. Right now we'll go ahead and enable the microphone in Pro Tools, and we'll be talking out of the RE20 mic. So let's go ahead and let me advance this here. Let's go ahead and transmit and plug in the line-in connector in the rear. And that's what it sounds like. This is using the, let me lower the audio, it's a little hot. Audio 1, 2, that's fine right there. So these are the settings on the MBox 2 Mini. If you have one with one of the sessions, it should be set the same way. The controls should be in the same order. So let's see here. Let's lower down the carrier. Down back this it's up to 15. Let's put it at 10 there. Audio test. This is the RE20 mic running Pro Tools here with the TS990 and the Asymod C1. And right now we're gonna do a switch on the receivers. We're listening to the audio coming out of the IC706 MK2G, and we're gonna put that volume down. Okay, so this is what it sounds coming out of the Drake R8 receiver. Obviously, a lot more full-bodied. We are receiving in 6K, 6 kilohertz of bandwidth on the receive there on the Drake R8. Now, the Drake R8 has a tone control. I can play with it, and that's right in the middle. If I bring it towards the right, you get a lot more highs. Audio 1, 2, audio 1, 2, 3. And if I bring it towards the left, you get a lot more bass here. Oh yeah. And we bring the tone control back to the 12 o'clock position. Audio 1, 2, 3. So that's 6 kilohertz bandwidth receiving on the Drake R8 receiver. And that's what it sounds like as compared to the ICOM IC706. Actually, we can mix both audios in. I'll bring up the level on the 706 MK2G and mix them both in here live. Audio 1, 2, audio 1, 2, 3. Here we have the audio of both the IC706 and the Drake R8 receiver mixed together. So let's kill the R8. And this is just a 706 MK2G. Wow, what a difference. I think I like the Drake a lot better. I'll bring this down and we'll put that up. And there's the Drake again.
Wow, what a difference. Anyhow, it really depends on the end user, what you like better. Some people prefer the audio coming out of the 706. All right, so that's what it sounds like. The Asymod C1, together with the amazing Kenwood TS990. Now we'll do a test throughout all the bands and see the max modulation we could do for a given power output.
Okay, so now we're going to test the demodulator and see how that works and how it sounds like. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, enable the microphone on Pro Tools, right there. And we're going to connect our splitter to the output of the headphones here. And connect it to our line in and our computer. Okay, so our monitor output, as you can see there, it's a bit too high. Let's see. Our monitor output, as you can see, is a bit too high there, so we'll bring that down around there. Now again, we're listening to the receive. What you see there is the receive on the radio. If we use the fader, if we fade towards the TX, now we're listening only to the transmission audio, and if we switch over to the RX audio, all we're listening to is the received audio. Okay, so right in the middle for now. Let me plug in my headphones. Oh, okay, we're listening to the receiver. So there we killed the receiver completely. And yeah, the receiver's totally gone there, and to the right we hear the receiver. Okay, so let's start recording over here so you guys can see what I'm listening to on the headphones. Okay.
So right now we're actually listening to the line in coming right out into my headphones. So I hear how I come out of Pro Tools. If I get a little closer to the mic. Right now, I'm listening to the line in audio, not the demod. So the audio coming straight out of Pro Tools is going into my headphone and into the laptop for recording. If I switch to demod, we won't hear anything because we're not transmitting on AM right now. So we'll go back to a line. Audio 1, 2. Okay, there we are. And what we do is let's fade to the middle where we can listen to both the receiver and the transmission.
So there we are. We could hear the static from the received signal, and we could hear me, or you could completely just hear the receiver and block out the transmit audio. We'll put it right in the middle, right there. Okay, so right now we're going to test the demod, so we'll switch it over to the demod, and we're going to fade to the TX audio only, and we'll go ahead and key up. Again, we're running Pro Tools with the RE20 right now. Let's go ahead and key up.
Audio 1, 2, hello audio. Audio test 1, 2, 3. This is the RE20. And Pro Tools, we're listening to the demod. We're listening to the demod right now. And this is what it sounds like. The demodulated audio has no obstruction. It's basically how you're coming out of the antenna. So that's why you get this beautiful, perfect audio. So, I mean, you guys can set your processing to however you want. This particular session is not that aggressive, doesn't have that many plugins active. So we only get the basic processing that we need here, plus a little bit of depth and stuff like that, but very minute. Anyways, this is what it sounds like. As you can see right now, we're doing 200% modulation there on the O-scope. Audio 1, 2, 3. And if we look at the meter, we're actually doing 15 watts of carrier at the moment. About 12 watts of carrier, and audio 1, 2, about 40 watts, 40 to 45 watts PEP. That puts us right at 200% modulation. So that's the audio coming out of the demodulator. And to listen to the line-in audio, we just flip it down. To listen to the line-in audio, we just flip it down. Let me lower the audio here. It went a little hot on me. To listen to the demod audio, just switch over to the demod, to the line-in. And apparently that audio is a little lower than the transmitted audio. I would have to match the output right there. Okay, so this is the line audio coming directly out of Pro Tools. And this is the demod, and this is the demod audio. Audio 1, 2, audio 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there you have it. Next, we're going to go ahead and test out the other functions. For example, the speaker disable. Right now, we're using the headphone, and we don't have the audio on the radio. The volume is separate. These volume controls do not affect anything of your audio being received here, your audio levels, because we're tapping in before the volume control. Okay, so let's go ahead and stop transmitting and put up the speaker on the radio. Speaker.
Let's go ahead and stop transmitting to show you that. And right now, we hear the speaker. You kill the speaker by turning it off right there. Okay, that way you don't feed back when you're monitoring yourself with the headphones. All right, so next is you got your MUX switch, so you can transmit from here. Yeah, there you go. You can transmit from here, and you don't need to be. You could key up from the send button, or you could key up from the MUX button on the Asymod box. We'll try out the on-air recorder. Actually, we could do that right now. We could record our audio that we're listening to. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and test out the recorder right now. Let's go ahead and transmit.
And talking to the mic. Here we go. We're gonna start recording right now. This is the Asymod recorder, 3.6 Ks wide and 10 seconds of record time. Let's play it back by pressing the play button. Right now, this is the Asymod recorder, 3.6 Ks wide and 10 seconds of record time. There you have it.
Now we'll go ahead and test out the ID function. To record your station ID, you can simply use an app like this voice record app and record your station ID. Asymod Hi-Fi. Okay. Let's play it back. Asymod Hi-Fi. Okay, so now we're gonna get a 1/8 inch audio jack that plugs into my older iPhone, and we're gonna connect it to the ID record line N in the rear. And we're gonna press the ID record button at the same time that we play this back. Okay, so we get our 1/8 inch audio jack, and we connect it to our iPhone. We press play and press the ID record at the same time. Okay. Now let's test it out on the air. Okay, so now we have actually transferred our recorded ID into the Asymod C1, and now every time we key up, let's see, let's start recording on Vegas. So we'll go ahead and transmit Asymod Hi-Fi. Every time we transmit, we get the recorder on the air. Asymod Hi-Fi. There you go. Asymod Hi-Fi. Every time you transmit, you hear the ID. Asymod Hi-Fi. So that's the station ID function. Next, we'll do a test throughout all the bands and see the performance of the Asymod C1 alongside the Kenwood TS990. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to testing each individual band. We have put together a list here of the maximum levels that should be used per band. We'll go and test out the 80, 40, 20, and 10 meter bands. We'll be able to show you how to use the oscilloscope and set the references. Basically, all the scopes are pretty much the same. People have been wanting me to put some instructions on the video, so we'll go through the procedure of the oscilloscope, how to set up the trigger, just the basic functions so you could see your modulation envelope. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll start at the 10 meter band and we'll move on to the 80 meter band. All right, let's go ahead and put all the Asymod controls counterclockwise. That's the first step. Asymmetry, carrier, modulation, and gain. And we're gonna go ahead and test this on 28300. We're on AM. Our power and carrier are at the max. The Asymod switch is enabled behind the Kenwood, and our Asymod is on. All right, so we'll go ahead and transmit. We'll do a low power test. We'll do 2 watts. We'll switch out the no, better yet, we'll leave the 250 watt slug and we'll go ahead and set a low dead key 2 watts, and let's work at 2 watts throughout all the bands. All right, so we'll start transmitting. We'll bring up the carrier up to 2 watts. We'll go on the low scale here and bring up the carrier to 2 watts right there. You can see right there, that's 2 watts. And let's go ahead and run the tone. We have set at 800 hertz tone. So there's the tone. As you can see, the modulation envelope starting to form. But first, we forgot to set a reference here on the oscilloscope. So let's go ahead and on-key. Take out the tone. Key again. And we have the 2 watts set. At the beginning, when you start transmitting, it'll level out as it gets warm, but there it'll stabilize. We have 2 watts there, so let's bring up a reference. So it's 2 divisions. Each square is a division, so let's go ahead and lower the voltage per division as to make it more sensitive. As you can see, we're right on the top line, but we haven't reached the bottom line. It's a little off, so we use the position for that. We go down a little bit. There is centered, and now we decrease the voltage per division a little more until we cover fully the 2 squares, 2 divisions. So now we're at 2 watts of dead key. Our reference is set. We'll start the SIG-gen right now. And there you see our modulation envelope. We got to increase our modulation till we reach 99% modulation. That is when the lower, the valley, or you Okay, so we'll lift up our modulation now until we reach 99% modulation. Right there. We don't want to go past that. Now, to stop the moving around, we have to assign the trigger. Okay, so let me show you how to set up the trigger. The trigger, once we transmit and we modulate, and that's 100% modulation right there. That's 100% exactly right there. Now, if you come across this, right, all you got to do is go to setup for the trigger. You press setup, then you come and you assign the source to channel 3. Okay, and we move our level here, and actually what we're doing is we're making it sync to the rising edge right there. So that's 100% modulation. So let's unkey. Let's take off the 800 hertz tone. Let's transmit. We got our 2 divisions. Let's lower the gain a little down. That's correct. Right there. All right, so we'll go ahead and verify that we got 2 watts on the meter. We're a little above, so we bring it back down to 2 watts right there. Now we need to bring this up until we cover the 2 divisions. Now we start the modulation 100%, and let's add some asymmetry, some gain to our positive peaks, and that is 200% right there, almost 190 give or take. And now we're doing close to 20 watts on the meter from a 2 watt dead key, whereas at 100% you're only doing 8 watts. So that's the loudness that's added by adding asymmetry. Okay, so that's on the 10 meter band. Let's go ahead and try the other bands. Let's unkey, and let's move to the 20 meter band. Now let's go ahead and bring all our controls counterclockwise, and set up for a 2 watt dead key. Bring up the carrier till we see the 2 watts. First we gotta kill the audio. There we have our 2 watts on the meter. We gotta adjust our reference. It's too sensitive, so we'll go counterclockwise here. We'll increase the voltage per division, and that's under. We want to reach that line right there. That's perfect. Okay, so now we can start the modulation. There you go. It's a little bit low, very low. We'll bring the modulation level up until we get to 100%. Okay, we want to pinch at least there. Okay, so we're doing there 150% modulation without asymmetry. It just acts, the PA acts a little different, has different gain in different frequencies. So here on the 20 meter band, right off the bat, you have 150% modulation. If you want to add loudness, bring your asymmetry control up, and you go up to 300% modulation. So there you go. If you want to actually be at 100%, then you have to bring your modulation down to 100% positive. But you see, we're doing about 60% or 70% on our negatives. That's the way the PA reacts. So if you want to compensate, you bring up your modulation till you see your 99 peaks, and you're doing there already 200% modulation. All right, so that'll be a 17 watt PEP output. Let's take off the modulation with actually we have a 3 watt dead key. I must have touched the control when I was moving around. So, all right, so we got about a 14 watt PEP output from a 2 watt carrier. That puts us at 150% modulation. All right, so that's the 14 megahertz 20 meter band. Let's go ahead and unkey, and let's move on to the 40 meter band, 7 megahertz. So let's go to 7200. Okay, 7200. Let's go ahead and put all the Asymod controls down, all the way down, and we'll transmit, and we'll bring up the asymmetry. We'll bring up the carrier, and we'll set it again at 2 watts. Right there. You see, we need to adjust here and make each division less sensitive. Increase the voltage per division. Let's see, until we get to we're a little off. The offset's a little, so let's bring it down there. That's centered. And now decrease the voltage by division until we got 2 divisions. And we're ready to modulate with our 2 watt carrier. We start the audio and we bring up our modulation until we get 100%. Again, we have a lot of gain on our positive peaks as it is. So right there, when you're doing 95% negative modulation, you're actually doing 160 to 170 on your positive peaks. That gives us a 20 watt PEP output out of a, out of a 2 watt dead key. All right, let's on key. Now let's move on to the 80 meter band. I think 3850 is the AM window. Right there, and let's put all the controls down. And transmit. Bring your asymmetry. Let's bring it up again to 2 watts. Your carrier control. And start the tone. No, not just yet. We need to adjust the reference here. So again, we got to make it less sensitive and increase our voltage per division on our oscope till we reach the 2 divisions. All right, bring it up a little bit. That is correct. And we'll start the modulation. We'll bring up our modulation level till we get what we need. Again, we have an issue here with the, let's go ahead and adjust our level and our trigger so we could stop the moving around. Okay, so there we have it. You could add asymmetry if you like here on the 80 meter band. That's over 200% modulation. It's back down. If you want to hit those 99% negative peaks, you're there at 200. you go beyond 300% modulation. There you go. That's your modulation envelope right there. And we'll bring back down the asymmetry. That leaves us at 200% modulation. We bring down the modulation to 100%. See, we lose a little bit on our negative peaks. Again, to stop the blinking, you adjust your level for the trigger. And there it is, the Asymod C1 and the Kenwood TS990.